let Pierre present his views. One is that we'll be editing a big proof roadmap. So sit anywhere, yeah, sit anywhere. We'll be editing a big proof roadmap. I'm setting up a GitHub site for doing that, and if you're interested, I'll contact several people to contribute, to make contributions. But if you're interested in contributing, you can email me, and I'll give you some writing assignments. This is a way of this is a way for you to get your viewpoint represented, and it's a way for me to actually outsource some of the work. The second announcement is James.
Yes. So for my sins, I'm the chair of the Committee on Electronic Information of the International Mathematical Union. There's an International Congress of Mathematicians in not quite 13 months' time in Rio de Janeiro. And we were looking at the program, and we were asked what panel we wanted. And I suggested I put in an original bid for a panel on big proof in case the audience here felt that they wished to participate in that. So if people are interested in that, they can let me know as soon as possible. I will try to find a way of organising it.
Okay, so contact James about that if you have any questions. Okay, yes.
Okay, can you hear me? Yeah. Yes. So I made some slides. I got mail from Shankar at 11:30 last night, so it was a little bit of a late night. I thought I'd just start with some predictions for 2051. Why 2051? It's because one of my valued colleagues, our local machine learning expert, he posted something on Facebook saying that they had interviewed 300 top AI experts about the future of AI. And it was started by something like, in 3 years, computers will be able to fold sheets. And it ended with, in 2051, computers can simulate all human activity. So, of course, we can now ask something even more unrealistic. Will all mathematics be formalized? Will all programs be proved correct? I think I can just say immediately that I think the answer to both of those are no, although I will probably not be there to see it. But what what we see a lot at the moment, is that there are, on the whole, really two. The two professions of being a mathematician and being a formalizer are different kind of people with different kinds of skill. I could talk about this at great length, but I think maybe the most important thing I want to say today is that I think really it would be good if it would be easier to have joint education in computer science and maths. It's just so difficult, for example, locally at my university in Sweden, in Chalmers, to make mathematicians interested in putting computer science courses into their programs. And it's equally difficult to get computer scientists to realize that it's good for them to know more of traditional mainstream mathematics than they do at the moment. So I hope you will all help in this endeavor. I then think I will try to be a little bit, not go on for too long, but what I want to I see my role here is to represent the intuitionistic or dependent type theory part of the proof-assistant community. We have seen in several talks, that basically we have three foundations, set theory for MESAR, classical type theory or higher order logic for things like PVS, HOL, Isabelle. And then we have the dependent type theory systems like Coq-Lee, Nagda, etc., NuPearl, not to be forgotten. And I would like just to highlight a little bit in what sense the dependent type theory community is a little bit different and has somewhat different aims from the other two parts. And it really goes back to the sort of very principled and philosophical origins of this movement. With, I put the title of Per Martin Löf's a seminal paper, Constructive Mathematics and Computer Programming, that is actually maybe not even most importantly about formalization, but about the unification of mathematics and programming. This has always been somehow the war cry that has made me most excited about working in this field. And I feel that what Georges Gontier spoke about and what he writes in his papers about his big formalization efforts is a kind of latter-day justification of or version of Martin Löf's ideas. Martin Löf's paper was written in 1979, and some 30 years later, there is a paper by Georges where he says that the approach that proved successful for this proof was to turn almost every mathematical concept into a data structure or a program in the Coq system, thereby converting the entire enterprise into one of program verification. So this is different from the two other approaches in the sense that the Coq system is also a programming language, and the concepts that you formalize there are primarily programs and data structures. So if we look at the landscape of dependent type theory, we see somehow, try to kind of classify work in that area into three parts, but they are all related. In the sense we have the kind of pragmatic use of dependent type theory system. A lot of Coq and Lean, it's simply, you want to use Coq in much the same way as you want to use Isabelle or HUL Lite or something, just as a good system. You don't care too much about this, unification of programming and mathematics aspect. This has been very, very successful, as we know. And I just wanted to emphasize the recent focus on meta-programming we see in several of these proof assistants as a way to get automation in these systems. The other part of the community, which at the moment is very active, is what we could call foundational type theory. The whole history of this field has been driven by foundational considerations, and there was just such a lot of new thought, new impetus to this field by the work of Vladimir Voevodsky and others on univalence, homotopy type theory, higher inductive type things like that. So we are still discussing a lot in this community. What are the exact what is the exact system that we are using? We really don't know. We have several different versions. I've listed some of them here, and they were mentioned in previous talks. There is the Unimath system of Vladimir. There is the Hotbook system, which was also, both of these were mentioned in Martin Descardo's talk. We don't know quite yet what is a higher inductive type. There is an exciting new type theory by Thierry Cocon and his co-workers, cubical type theory. And not to be forgotten, the very important version of type theory, which is so-called extensional type theory, which is where New Perl is perhaps the main implementation of that, but there is also new work by Andrei Bauer and his co-workers in Ljubljana on the Andromeda system. We don't quite know how all these things work out together, and I'm somehow very glad that we haven't solved all these questions, because I find them very, very, very exciting. One can also wonder, is there something beyond that? There is a lot of work by people in this field and people in related field on the computational content of classical logic, but so far we haven't really seen that having any effect on the design of the type theory systems, but perhaps it should. Then there is a third part of the community. It's really the part of the community we call it dependent types in programming, and it's the people who are somehow more interested in programming than in proving. If we look at Agda and the Idris system from St. Andrews, you should really think of these systems rather as future Haskell, future functional programming languages rather than as competitors of Coq and Lean. So there is a lot of thought of sort of putting programming language ideas in order to make these systems very flexible to use, sometimes at the expense of the logical rigidity. There are very interesting work also on somehow making these programs deal with so-called effects, so that you can kind of program more efficiently and more like you do in traditional programming language. So it's also a very exciting field, I would say. And I think that these somehow programming language-oriented ideas, they should really be merged with the more foundational ideas and for some kind of future system which will be, the future of the dependent type in the dependent type area. Yeah, I think that sums up what I wanted to say.
Unexpected that you really are asking for more of a mathematics influence on computing, and that mathematics not only influence programming languages but systems design, and kind of the dual of Peter's position. But maybe there is some common ground here as well. Okay, yeah, Tobias.
You said that one of the different features that distinguishes type theory from the other set theory and classical higher order logic is that it's got this programming language built in. I don't think there's really a difference, because HOL also has a subset of programming language. In PVS you can program, and so the fly spec verification also is just, you could apply the same comment that Georges Gontier made about, I guess that was the four-color theorem, to the fly spec verification and the work that Fabian Imler has been carrying out for the Ismail's 14th problem. So I don't see that as really a differentiating feature.
It's perhaps more a difference in the way the systems were originally designed.
That is probably true.
Yeah, but you're saying you're building in a programming language inside the logic. Yes, yeah. Yes.
Yeah, and
programming languages also influence. In the sense that people who have worked on programming languages have a lot of very interesting ideas that sometimes feed back. As I was thinking of things like type classes and module systems that began life to do with structuring large programs, but found their way back into group systems. So it's kind of a two-way process.
actually, I don't see Jeremy here, but he gave a talk at Berkeley recently on modularity in mathematics.
Yeah.
And so the idea is that there are kind of software engineering principles that you have to apply to structuring mathematics as well. And I pointed him to a book by Alex Stepanov. So I now don't remember the name of the book. Somebody can look it up. But it's a really impressive book on how there has been kind of a lot of software engineering going on. So Alex Stepanov is the inventor of the standard templates library, generic programming, and so on. So, but this is actually a book on exactly that, the idea of taking software engineering principles back to mathematics. Okay, thanks again.
Thank you. Before talking to you about future, I will talk to you about past, and especially the numbers in the Unimath library. When I arrived at Princeton 2 years ago, there was already the natural numbers, which come from the standard library of Church, and there was also integers and rational numbers defining upon the natural numbers of Church using functions which generate functions which divert the quotient of differences and the quotient of fraction in order to define integers and rational numbers. For all of this, we had lots of notions like orders, theorem, predicate for the compatibility with operations. And during my years at Princeton, we also added the notion of lattices, truncated subtraction, a definition which can be used even if we don't have a decidable order, an Archimedean property which is reasonable for every usual algebraic structure. And there was also proved that many properties are conserved using the function which gives us quotients of differences of fractions. And then there is many tools to use and formalize number. But when I arrived, there wasn't real numbers, which was what I worked about. I chose to formalize first non-negative real numbers, then using the quotients of differences, I could obtain the real numbers for free. The non-negative real numbers are defined as a pair of a subset of non-negative rationals and a proof that it is a dedekind cut. Thanks to the Unimath library, such definition can be easily used, in particular, to prove things about equality. We don't have to care about the proof that our subset is. We don't have to care about the proof that the subset is a dedekind cut, because as it is proved to be in H-prop, then for free we have the equality, and we just have to check that we have the same subset in rational numbers. Then these things, which was really hard to do in Torch, using the standard library, now it is easier to work with such cuts. I define many things about these dedekind cuts and prove that it is a good set to represent non-negative real numbers. And thanks to all the theorems and proof and functions already proved for this function, I had for free that the set I defined for the real numbers was a commutative ring, a lattice. I had order. I also had for free the Archimedean property. But I still had the problems for the multiplicative inverse and the completeness. I solved this problem. I did the truncated minus, which helped me to define a function from the real numbers, which is a quotient of difference, and which returned to me a pair of non-negative real numbers. And in the library, we already had a function which take a pair of non-negative real numbers and return a real numbers. Then, with these real numbers, I would like to define more, to work more, to talk about limits. For limits, I base myself on the Bourbaki book. Then I defined filters, topological space, uniform structure, and complete uniform spaces. Then now there is a good base to work about functions, about limits. And now, what next for the Unimath library? First, to continue this work, it could be a good idea to add metric and node spaces. Even perhaps working on the set in which we define metric space and norm to have better hypotheses. There is also differentiability integrals to add, and perhaps connections between the different parts of Unimath, because the notion of filter also exists in for the domain of categories, and we talked with Benedict to see which connection we can do. Then it is still things which can also be do. Vladimir sent me a few things also to complete to continue the Unimath library. Few questions. If we will continue only as with a consultative hypothesis or add part of classical mathematics, which will be the future of proof assistance. If we have a better equality, which will be more adapted to univalence or not, and also about the universes, continue with à la Russell universe or change to the Tarski universe, then many questions. And the main thing, it is, what do you want to add? Because the Unimath library is a library where we can do lots of things. And then everyone can add, I forgot to add the address of the GitHub of the Unimath library, but you can also contribute to the future of Unimath. Thank you for your attention.
It looks like you're doing a lot of what I called abstraction engineering in this effort. And Mikhail asked for a theorem appreciator. Maybe one could have a proof appreciator actually, and maybe you could make it competitive. That given some aesthetic metric, you need to produce more beautiful proofs.
Yes.
So, is that something you think is feasible?
More beautiful proofs. Yes, now I hadn't yet enough stuff to do to prove beautiful theorems and prove that this formalization is good, but it seems it can be done. Yeah, we have all the elements, we can prove it is enough strong to formalize real numbers, then many theorems can be formalized and prove if we have a good decomposition.
Any other questions?
One of the reasons to reason about real number analysis is to also reason about programs that interact with the world. So is it easy to integrate this into a framework where you also have all the programming abilities that you need to describe a real life program, like you would have maybe data structures or programming structures?
Yes, it seems it can be done. It was also a reason for which I began to formalize first non-negative real numbers. It was to connect easily with real programs in order to have a metric
Can you
which we
repeat
trust.
what Asia did in this framework? Asia gave the talk on approximating integrals?
I don't remember exactly.
So her talk on Asia Mahboobi's talk on Tuesday was on approximating integrals.
Yeah, the idea to formalize
The same procedures.
yes, it is a possible use in order to have a better connection between the real world of programs. Yeah.
Okay.
After, there is many things to do to connect effectively.
Okay. Thanks. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you all for being here, and many thanks again to the organizers for inviting me in the first place, and also for inviting me to be on this panel. So I should start by summarizing a little bit my own work in automated theorem proving. First, because many people here ask me, what do you do? So I figured I may answer once and for all. And second, because it sets a stage a little bit of the kind of expertise that I can bring to this panel. So my most recent work is about generalizing the conflict-driven paradigm of conflict-driven close learning that we saw at work in Marin Hoyle's speech to theory combination and satisfiability modulo theories with a system called CDSAT, which is joint work with Shankar and with Stefan Graham-Legrand, and I shall talk about it on Monday if you are interested. Previous to that, I worked with David Plaisted on SGGS, which is a system that generalizes conflict-driven close learning to first-order logic. I also worked on interpolation of proofs, and we shall return to this later. I worked on integrating superposition and satisfiability modulo theories, on decision procedures based on superposition for satisfiability modulo theories, on canonical inferences. Incidentally, when we have a presentation of a theory which is canonical, that realizes what he would like, because it gets rid of search. In the sense that when you have a canonical presentation, you can actually prove a theorem by blind rewriting. Unfortunately, such canonical presentations of theories are a very rare finding. So in most cases, we do need to search. So the idea of getting rid of search is quite difficult to achieve in mechanical theorem proving. And I also work on the machine-independent analysis of theorem-proving strategies, mixing forward and backward reasoning by lemmaizing, parallel theorem proving, with work in first-order theorem proving that is actually historically behind the cube and conquer paradigm that Marin talked about, and making theorem proving more target-oriented or goal-sensitive. Now, by doing all these things, I matured the general expertise about several of the dominating paradigms in automated theorem proving. They include ordering-based strategies for first-order logic that are those with resolution, superposition, simplification. Many people call them completion-based, rewrite-based, saturation-based. I think ordering-based is really the best name because ordering are the key feature of those inferences and the key mechanism that the prover uses to prune the search space and to decide what to do. I worked with theorem-proving strategies based on sub-goal reduction. This should ring a bell. It is really the concept that appeared in Stephanie's beautiful talk on history. It dates back to the Newell and Simon approach, this notion of reducing goals to sub-goals. And today it is still alive in tableau-based theorem proving, where the proof takes the form of a closed tableau. Then there are SAT solvers that generates proofs by resolution, at least the SAT solvers based on conflict-driven close learning. Other SAT solvers may not necessarily generate a proof. Satisfiability modulo theory solvers generate proofs by resolution plus lemmas. And finally, first-order theorem provers based on instance generation. These systems implement directly the Herbrand theorem. So they generate instances, ground instances of a set of first-order clauses, and then invoke a satisfiability solver or a satisfiability solver modulo theories to decide whether the instantiation is unsatisfiable. And if it is unsatisfiable, also the original set is unsatisfiable. Otherwise, the generated model can be used to guide the generation of new inferences. And these systems typically generate proofs in the same way as the SAT or SMT solver does, or else they may generate a proof by resolution. Now, in this paradigm, you can see that all three the historical sets of roots that Stephanie described in her beautiful talk are still very much alive and well. Because here we have, from Newell and Simon, we have the usage of heuristics to decide which inferences to select. From Hao Wang, we definitely have the notion of implementing Herbrand theorem. Pretty much all these paradigms, whether ordering-based, sub-goal reduction, or instance generation, are ways of implementing Herbrand theorem. Instance generation does it in a very direct way, but also the resolution-based theorem proving or the tableau-based theorem proving ultimately are ways of implementing Herbrand theorem. And of course, there is very much alive and well the heritage of the work done at Argonne with Ora, Larry Wass, and Ross Overbeek that were described earlier. Actually, Stephanie's presentation stops short of describing the work of Bill McCune, who was really the one who brought together the Ora heritage with this notion of the automated proof assistant, and the Hao Wang heritage with this notion of the completely automated implementation of the Herbrand theorem. But anyway, those historical ideas are still alive in the theorem provers that implement this paradigm, such as Spas, Vampire, E, prior to those, Otter and Prover 9, EQP, and then KR Hyper, Isetheo, and so on, InstGen by Constantine, who is sitting there, and so on. Now, for all these systems, when it comes to proofs, so as you saw on this slide, this system generates different sorts of proofs. Resolution is almost ubiquitous, so proofs by resolution, superposition, and simplification. Proof is a closed tableau, because a tableau is a survey of interpretations, and so when the tableau is closed, we know that there is none, and therefore the input is unsatisfiable. Again, proofs by resolution in solvers, and also in instance generation theorem provers. Now, in general, in this end of the field, in automated theorem proving, we distinguish between derivation and proof. This is a key distinction. Derivation means all the inferences that the prover does. Proof, on the other hand, are only the inferences that lead to the result. So what happens in this prover oftentimes is that at the end of the run, the prover reconstructs the proof from the derivation. So it extracts from the final state of the derivation the information that is relevant to form the proof. Because you have to realize that when the solver or the prover holds, it may terminate in a state which says, for instance, a SAT or an SMT solver may simply say, I have a conflict at level 0. That means there is no guess that I can undo and search again, therefore I should report unsatisfiable. But from then to get a proof by resolution, the solver has to do some kind of proof reconstruction. Of course, he can also do the work beforehand during the run by starting doing it incrementally, but that's a difference in implementation. Conceptually, there is this notion of proof reconstruction which bridges the gap between the derivation and the proof. And also, if one has a parallel theorem prover, there may be issues there, because it may be necessary to make sure that the different instances of the prover or the different sub-processes that the central processor generated contribute correctly to the proof reconstruction. Now, another thing I would like to say is that here the title is Big Proofs, but we are really just as interested in models. And so this going big that Shankar advocated is true for proofs, but also for models. For instance, in Grandstock, he said that the reasoning part of his Imandra system was mostly finding counterexamples rather than proofs. Now, the two are obviously two sides of the same coin, because when we have a problem where we ask whether some conjecture phi is a logical consequence of a set of assumptions H, for this automated theorem prover, we usually formulate the problem in a refutational form. We ask whether H union not phi is unsatisfiable, and then we can have two kinds of answer. Either a refutation, which says H union not phi is inconsistent, and therefore it is proved that phi is a logical consequence of H, or else a counterexample, that is a model M of H union not phi, and that disproves the conjecture. So we have both proof and disproof. In reality, we really have three possible outcomes, because if we are in first-order logic, our prover may not terminate, and therefore we may have to put a limit. And even if we are in a decidable problem like SAT or SMT, we may not have enough resources to complete the answer of the problem. And so we may have either a proof or a disproof or a don't know kind of answer. Now, many of the challenges have been already touched upon by other speakers. Of course, we want to have more, better provers and solvers that give us more proofs, more models, solving more problems. Various issues that are studied in the field, as far as I can tell, around proofs include, for example, the quest for small proofs, which leads to the work in proof compression. This is being investigated in both SAT and first-order theorem proving. Then there is the quest for reusable proofs, which leads to proof libraries that have been already widely discussed with the Tobias talk and several other interventions. Then there are issues of proof presentation, how to make these machine proofs readable. As I said, here we are in the heritage of Hao Wang and the Argonne School and Ewell and Simon, so the proofs we get are really different from the way humans think. So how can we present this proof to make them more readable? How can we make proofs persuasive? This was actually the comment that Alan Robinson had also in the interview that Stephanie remembered at the end of her talk. For example, the proof of the Robbins conjecture that was obtained by Bill McCune with the EQP was transformed into a manual proof by Ingo Dan. So in that case, there was literally a manual transformation from machine proof to human proof. But that is not always possible or desirable, so there is the issue also of explanation, whether the proof is enough in terms of explanation or whether we should do more. Also, proofs may be something to search, for example, to extract interpolant, which is another topic alive in this field. And we could go on with attributes that we would like our proofs and models to have. In the end, we may even question whether proofs may be beautiful. And that is also, who knows, maybe theorem provers won't be used so much in the end by mathematicians, but rather by artists someday. And so maybe beauty may also be part of the quest. So to conclude, I would like to go back again to Marin's talk. He called those huge results alien truths. I would rather go all the way and dare to call them machine truths. And this for several reasons. First, I think those results show that machine intelligence does exist, and we should be proud and not fearful of these machines that we build in software and hardware. Now, machines clearly do things that we would not do, and not only in size, but also in the kind of steps they do. If I'm allowed to bring in a personal memory, I remember when I was a graduate student at Stony Brook, my advisor, Jie Jiang, was working on proving the Mufang identities in alternative rings that are not associatives. And he was going over the proof, and he was literally in wonder at the steps that the theorem prover would do, and that he would never have thought about doing when working in that algebra. So this is really wonderful. And finally, I wouldn't call them really alien truths, because maybe there are aliens after all, and they may take offense that we use alien in this manner. As you know, up to some time ago, people thought that there were planets only in the solar system. Now there are 3,621 confirmed exoplanets, and we keep counting. So maybe if there are aliens on exoplanet number 100,000, they may have other truths, and we just don't know. So in the end, there are many forms of intelligence. There is animal intelligence, which includes human intelligence. There is machine intelligence, as we show here. And who knows, maybe there is also alien intelligence. So those are, for me, machine truths. Thank you very much.
So I remember when I first, in my second semester in graduate school, I was taking Woody Bledsoe's theorem proving course, and I was also taking Dan Velleman's set theory course and trying to do resolution proofs in set theory, because I was doing both of those. So they didn't come out that well, actually.
I know.
So we have time for one question. Okay, let's thank Maria Paula again. Oh, Marai?
Although, let's not talk about aliens, but what I think, although I will also talk about it during Arcade, what I think would be a very interesting way of going forward is go beyond resolution, especially when it goes to propositional logic. And so the thing what I've been studying more lately is this, I don't know if you're aware of this, what we call interference proof systems, where you're not reasoning about things that are in the formula, but things that are absent. And I think there's a big way forward there. So I think I don't know if you're aware, but it's also for the Pythagorean triples, we also reason, for instance, symmetry breaking goes beyond that.
Absolutely. But I mean, the point of this was not really to advocate resolution, was just to give an account of other approaches that exist in the automated reasoning field. Here we learned mostly beautiful things about proof assistance, such as Coq-Lin systems that are really wonderful, but it is also important to be aware of this other side of the field that appeared a little bit only in your talk and in Jasmine's talk. So I really think that there is a lot of room for bringing together these various technologies. Resolution obviously is not the tool for everything. As Shankar said back a long time ago, there was this illusion, now we have resolution, we can do set theory in resolution, we'll conquer everything, and that plan failed miserably, if nothing else, because back then they didn't even have equality with resolution. So clearly there is still a lot of work to do in both inference systems and search, but it is also interesting that the fundamental ideas that Stephanie Dick reconstructed in her talk are still begetting new concepts and new systems today. Thank you.
But I think that the cool thing is that these new systems have potentially exponentially smaller proofs.
Yeah, actually, that's one thing that I think should be emphasized because of the people who aren't really working on automated reasoning. Is the mathematics of automated reasoning is actually quite beautiful because it mixes strategy and essentially mathematical constraints in an intelligent way. So the questions of modularity, of things that paths not followed, pruning, and so on actually come up in a mathematically beautiful way. So that's something where it's worth studying for its own sake.
Do you have time for one more question?
No, we need to move on. Sorry. Okay, thanks.
Steven? Sure. I don't have any slides or anything, so that's okay. So it will be short, I guess. So my name is Steven Obua. I'm currently, does it work? Yeah. I'm currently a sole trader at Recursive Mind. Thanks for inviting me. That was a really nice surprise. What interests me about theorem proving? I think that's the thing I want to say. I think, how do you get an idea into something that's real and something that's solid, right? I mean, every software engineer or everyone who creates something knows, okay, has his own process of going about these things. You have something vague, and then you do something. Personally, I start like scribbling in a notebook or something, and this doesn't look, I cannot read this afterwards anymore, but it helps me thinking. And then you somehow progress, and at the end, then you have the product. I mean, the product might be like a software program or a mathematical theorem, something like that. And yeah. So what I think how this should actually work is you have to start, of course, with something vague and imprecise. Maybe companies, big companies, then have a process that brings you from this starting point to the finish line. But I don't think they're doing too well with that, because otherwise there wouldn't be so many startups, right? Who have their own processes to get new ideas. So there is something vague at the beginning. I think even if it's vague, you will probably be able to somehow write it down as a text, as a Mathematica notebook. You will experiment with prototypes and these kind of things. And at the end, you want to have something more precise. I mean, ideally, a finished product. And now, obviously, what I'm thinking is, in the end, should be a precise formal formalization, a precise theory that describes what you have created. And so what I really want is a tool that accompanies me in this process. I'm starting somewhere vague, and then I'm staying in, well, tool is a small name, but let's call it an environment. I want to be in an environment that takes me from this point A to point B and allows me to morph it from A to B. And yeah, I think that's pretty obvious, that this is what you would want, that this is how, like, if you can do it like that, this is how products should be created, this is how everything should be created, that can be created that way. And something... Can we interrupt with questions? Can we interrupt with questions? Yeah, of course.
You know, when you talk about vague stuff and so on, you do mean doodles and diagrams and things.
Yeah, stuff like that. And okay, so I promise to make it short. Basically, these doodles and these diagrams, obviously, they cannot be lost. I mean, there is nothing more horrible like you have then in the end only the formalization, and like all the rest was lost. I mean, this kind of like destroy. I mean, if this would be everything that is left in the end, then this would create a lot of culture and a lot of like it would destroy the whole process. So this cannot happen. For example, it can also not happen that people insist on only using constructivist logics or maybe only set theories. Obviously, in the end, we want to have heterogeneous logics that you can morph into each other. Because different problems have different representations, and the logic is in the end just a representation for solving a problem. Yeah, that's me.
Great, thanks. Yeah. So that short thing you managed to actually provoke a number of questions, but I'm sure you guys have questions of your own. So the Gowers and Etchmendy, I think they had this project actually in
Hyperproof.
Not Hyperproof. They had a different project which you may not have heard of, but one where you essentially have a design together with a decision tree. That is, at every branch point in the thing, you say why you took that path instead of that. Why you chose to put a window in this side of the room rather than that. Why you chose to put the front door facing east rather than south, and this kind of thing. And for Dijkstra was actually a big exponent of this. When he wrote about his the creative process. He wrote about what he tried, what didn't work. I mean, he would document all these things, and this is something that's lost when we present mathematics the way we do right now, which is the final polished product. So
yeah, I thought I read about this. I thought it's part of Hyperproof, because Hyperproof also kind of allows you to combine diagrams and first order logic reasoning.
It does, but this was a more general framework where it was just about justifying designs in any domain. So it was more like a computer-aided design product where you actually came up with a justification for your decisions. Okay, let's thank Stephen again.
Right. I also haven't got any slides, but I will actually stand up. My name is David Trenar. I am the editorial director for mathematical sciences at Cambridge University Press. I've given a talk I've been on a panel like this once before, and I began it by saying I'm not quite sure why I'm here, and I'm not quite sure why I'm here either this time. But I'm going to begin with two quotes. The first from Michael Faraday. There are 3 necessary steps in useful research. You can guess what they are. The first to begin it, the second to end it, and the third to publish it. And Francois Arago also wrote, to get to know, to discover, to publish, this is the destiny of the scientist. I'm not trying to be defensive here, but certainly what was true 200 years ago for Faraday and Arago is even more true today, as it applies to all research, not just useful, and not just even to science, but also to mathematics and computer science. Because apart from the fact that one doesn't always immediately know if research is useful or useless, it's certainly useful to you, the researcher. Because you as academics, well, for you as academics, research is a core part, sometimes the only part of your job. Publishing your research tells others what you're doing, and through peer review, it's validated and helps to advance your career. Your discipline. And your career, maybe. I'm getting to that one later. It's an expected return on the investment in you. You know, the public pays for you, essentially, and they want to know what you're doing and whether it's worth it. Publishing your research is one way that return is estimated. I won't say measured, because I don't really believe you can measure it, but at least you can estimate it. And a publishing history is essential for most people's career progression. So much of the above, as I said, is about publishing in general and about science in general, not particularly about mathematics or computer science, and nothing at all to do with big proof. I'm going to talk a little bit now about what the role of the publisher in all that business was. We're a bit sort of, I'll forget that. We were involved originally in the dissemination of material. I wouldn't say that's important now. It's, you give seminars, you go to conferences, you publish on the archive, you have grey literature, you have post papers on the internet, you do this sort of social sharing, this sort of stuff. You don't really need publishers to let people know what you've been doing. Facilitate the validation. Well, personally, and this is my personal opinion, I don't actually think that papers need validating. I don't think, and the reason I don't think they need validating in general is because, first of all, most stuff never gets read or cited by anybody, so it doesn't matter if it's true or not. The stuff that you reject from one journal probably gets submitted to another journal and will then get published. If it doesn't get published in the second journal, it'll get published in the nth journal. So it's going to get published anywhere, and there's a huge burden on your community in this validation process, and it's probably not worth it. Probably, overall. Improving readability, functionality, discoverability, that word, discover again. I think that is something that publishers can still do. We all publish nowadays in English, for better or worse. When you, and I can tell you this from the personal experience, when you read something written by a non-native speaker of English, and you have to, or even a native speaker of English, you've got to prepare it for other non-native speakers of English. You want to make it as simple as possible, as clear as possible, remove ambiguity. That's something that publishers still can do, I think. Functionality and stuff like that, well, that's partly author, partly publisher. Discoverability, partly author, partly publisher. Maintain and enable, or possibly even disable access. Yeah, we can do that, but it's not necessary. We do provide stability. I am told, and I believe, that 30% of URLs that are listed in people's publications are no longer valid by the time people click on them. Well, at least you know that a publisher's website's probably going to be valid. And we help to provide metrics or a cipher for quality, maybe. Certainly it's true that if you start a journal and you have a good editorial board and that editorial board behave, then people might want to give more credence to a particular journal than to another journal. So, yeah, possibly we do. Another thing we do, which I don't think is emphasized enough, and that is that we provide a break on publishing. Or we help to provide a break on publishing, or we would do if we were the only means of publishing stuff, but of course we're not. And you know, there is information overload. Everyone is being encouraged to publish. Everyone's employer, well, every academic employer anyway, wants you to publish more and more and more because they want to see what you're doing. They want to be able to say, oh, I'm in a big research department or whatever. But actually, what you really want is to publish less, because all that's happening is that people are sort of producing stuff that nobody reads, producing stuff that nobody pays for. You want it published, but you don't want to pay for it, all the rest of it, all these things. You're in an unstable situation. Putting a brake on publication actually will be the best way to resolve this funding crisis when it comes to publishing. So, you know, I talked about what used to happen, and everyone knows the world has changed. Do you, as mathematicians or computer scientists, still need the services that publishers provide? Well, mainly you probably don't, actually, in my opinion. And certainly the ones that you do still want, you probably don't want to pay the amount we charge for it. But let me say, though, this is just you we're talking about, just mathematicians and computer scientists. You know, you've got your big proof stuff. A computer might be able to check it for you. Certainly a human wouldn't. So, you know, what's the point of validating? And if you've moved everything to the archive, well, you don't need a publisher. But, you know, there are 20,000 journals in STM alone. 25% of those are in biomedicine. There's 2 million articles a year. There's 100 and something thousand maths articles a year. You know, that's a tiny percentage of all STM output. It wouldn't affect publishers if all mathematicians and computer scientists stopped publishing in journals. They just carry on as they do now. Of course, there would be some publishers that would be massively affected. Cambridge would be more affected, I think, than Elsevier, but nevertheless, we would still survive. Places like London Math Society might not, or the American Math Society might not. They would be the people who suffer. But anyway, so it's important for those publishers, I think, to be able to provide a service that you still value and that you don't want to do yourself, so that you can get on with the job that you're actually paid for, which is, you know, proving theorems and stuff. Anyway, that's what I've got to say.
So it looks like, you know, rejection is where you...
I think rejection is best.
Best services provided. So please.
Well, this is not a question but a comment. But things you said took me back to when I was in my very first job, which was working for what was then the War Office. And one of the senior staff there once said, never publish anything that you have not thought about for at least 20 years. And I think there's some wisdom in that.
You work in GCHQ?
No, it wasn't GCHQ, no.
Okay. Well, I do think that's the case too, because I think people just spew out stuff too much.
Yeah.
By the way, you know, I've published one book and David's my publisher, so that explains perhaps why he's here. But you know the story of Russell and Whitehead's Principia. The pictures showed up that they wrote their manuscript, put it on a wheelbarrow, wheeled it over to Cambridge University Press. Cambridge did some, CUP did some calculations and said, I think we'll make an £800 loss on this. And Russell and Whitehead had spent 10 years, and the publisher was about to reject their manuscript. They were heartbroken, but the guy said, it's okay, we'll publish it anyway. And that's why you're still here.
And we still publish that, by the way. And we still sell, even though it's been utterly superseded, about 10 copies of every year, and it costs about 500 quid, 3 volumes now. Amazing.
Thank you for what you do, and we need to. Oh, you have a question? Go ahead.
Well, it's also more of a comment actually. Well, one big service which publisher provides is to give the author back the opinions of the referees who are supposedly carefully read the paper. I mean, they can very easily be the only people who ever will carefully read the paper. And having this feedback is extremely important thing, I think.
I think it is important, but I think you could also get that through things like social media or the archive inviting sort of moderated comments on your paper and stuff like that. Although, having said that, we do publish a very highly cited journal, a highly rated journal in nothing to do with mathematics called Behaviour and Brain Sciences, in which not only is the paper published, but also the referees' comments and a debate about them. And I don't think that would apply in mathematics so much.
It could do.
Well, it could do, but it isn't done.
Well, you can put it on the web, and probably many people will read it, but it doesn't mean that they will write back to you with kind of critical and technical comments that you get from the referees.
No, we quite a lot of the time, although you probably know this, but I'll mention it anyway in case you don't, that when you fill in your referee's feedback, there are two forms you can fill in, one for the editor and one for the author. And it's quite often how different they are, I might say.
Okay, so thank you.
Thank you very much.
Patrick will
I think
bring us in for a soft landing.
Exactly. I wondered why I was here, but I think I'm here to represent ignorance and the great unwashed who do not know things. I've seen an awful lot of mathematics go by. I worked for 30 years for mathematical reviews. All the sorts of things that David is scurrilously saying about the subject matter and its quality are probably true in part, right? Well, you can quibble over that. Yeah. Math Reviews also is an example of somebody who would be hurt by the publishers stopping their businesses, which probably explains the American Mathematical Society's reluctance to engage in what would seem an absolutely correct thing for it to be doing, namely involving itself in a global digital mathematical library. And in that respect, I represent the group that is trying to get forward to such a thing. Now, a great deal has been said already, and many things have been said that I would have liked to have said or would like to repeat, but I won't. One thing that could be said, if Shankar suggested that one think futuristically, and passing straightforwardly to that, if it were true that commercial publishing were not benefited enough either by in its image or financially by mathematics, we might lose a lot of the literature. In fact, for financial reasons, some of it is being paywalled away. And if there is something that a resource that this community is dependent on, it's the legacy of its literature. Now, one of the possible advantages to attempted formalizations at any level is in fact the possibility of creating a global public good based upon the formalized knowledge of the community in various ways, formalized in various ways. There's no departure from heterogeneity of viewpoints that's required in that. But by formalizing knowledge, you're in fact passing to transmissible information that is not otherwise covered in the law by laws of copyright. copyright licensing and such practical sorts of things have been an impediment to making a digital library, for instance. So if there's one thing that might be of interest, if you think about it, it's that by changing the way you encode and allow other people to encode mathematical knowledge, you are perhaps finding a way to deal with the problem of loss of importance as a commercial product. There are certainly lots of other things that I'd like to bring up, and they have been brought up, or many of them. And you've had from Stephen Watt and from Michael Kohlhauser demonstrations of the wide range of thinking that's involved in trying to consider the whole matter of a global digital library. But setting that aside, or building on that perhaps, I ought to remark, in addition to the possible big proof session at the ICM in 2018, there's also to be a session on digital libraries, which goes back to the IMU's resolution that it would be a good thing back in 2006 and all sorts of previous work. Now, I think I ought to stop.
It's slipping my mind now, but I don't mean to say something about this. In sum, it looks like the big challenge is really the kind of gap between informality and formality. I think that seems to be the one that many people want to bridge. I mean, Tim talked about something that actually is a soft reverse search, reverse index, something that allows you to expand the proof by expand the explanations and proofs by need. The idea of actually taking proofs that are being done automatically and rendering them in an understandable form, so that we can.
It doesn't just have to be the proof, but we all want Vannevar Bush's memex, to go back to your little slide, which looks like a Royal BLGP30, but it was not supposed to be that. And there have been projects since then. For instance, there was the project led by Atiyah and Topser to produce a mathematicians' workbench, which was well funded for a while, and in fact led to the development of the MathML standard to replace ISO 12083. People keep trying. I think now we are in a position, the community, the math community, are in a position with modern digital tools to do a lot more. In fact, to start something that will persist, and that's what we're trying to do. But the theorem ATP, ITP formalization community provides one very large aspect of, to my mind, what can be the preservation of the knowledge for the longer term. Things like collecting digitized books and so on, that's something that's, is a different matter and doesn't really interfere.
So I recently went to the IEEE Milestone Award for the team at SRI that developed Shaky the robot, and as part of that, they actually invented this edge detection algorithm called half transform, and this is what's used in your lane detection algorithm on your modern car as well. And it turned out that one person had the problem, and another person knew the obscure piece of 19th century mathematics that was relevant to it, and was able to say, go read about that. And from that, they actually invented the half transform. So this is again something that illustrates the need to actually preserve even the yet uncited pieces of mathematics.
Yeah, it's widely agreed. Mathematical literature is really quite persistent, though Tobias Nitka's explaining that the good thing about his archive is it's going to be maintained and the proofs will not rot, might give one pause.
Okay, any questions for Patrick? So I'll let Christy, say the concluding word.
That would be please me.
Oh, but let's thank Patrick first.
So I opened this workshop by saying that this was the workshop that I was most excited about on a personal level of all the workshops since I arrived at the Institute. I haven't been able to attend all the talks, but I reckon I've been here for about half of them, and it has just been, on a personal note, fantastic. So thank you to all of you for that. But also, it's been fascinating stepping back from my personal interests. I love what this has done as a workshop because we have amazing mathematics happening here week in, week out. But what you as a community are doing is you're throwing it on its head and you're saying, actually, not just us humans can do it, computers can do it as well. And that's been a very, very interesting challenge for the mathematics community. It's been a complete pleasure having you all here, and I'm looking forward to lots more proposals coming in similar areas. So thank you all. Thank you so much to the organisers. Thank you all for coming, and it's not over yet. We've got a few more weeks, so thank you.
Thank you and your staff.
Thank you.
Okay, it's pub time, yeah.
What?
It's fantastic. Thank you.